to the Read-Aloud Revival podcast. This is the podcast that helps you make meaningful and lasting connections with your kids through books. Hello, Sarah Mackenzie here. Happy you're joining me for this mini episode of the podcast. It can be hard to find books to read with your teens, right? It's not that common these days to read aloud with our teens, but we know that reading aloud continues to be of primary benefit to our kids' academic, social, and emotional success when we continue to read to them long past the time they're able to read on their own. So in this episode, I want to help you read aloud with your teens. Finding books to read aloud with teens presents a unique challenge. A lot of books being published today for teens contain content that's, not necessarily something we'll have a good time reading with our teens or something we want to hand to our teens at all. Am I right? Have you been to your local bookshop and looked in the teen section lately? In this mini episode, I want to share 5 books that would be great read-alouds for teens. None of these books have objectionable content that you couldn't read so that you couldn't read them aloud even if your younger kids are around. But still, I'd recommend these primarily as suited for teens, and they'll definitely keep your teens engaged and interested. They're also all new books because you know where to find classics, right? There's a million places online where you can find classics to read with your teens, but I wanted to find books published in the last not too long decade or so where they would appeal especially to your teens and that you could read aloud and feel good about and have great conversations and a great experience with your teens. Before we launch in, can I ask you a favor? Would you take just a minute today to give the podcast a rating or review in iTunes? When you do that, it makes our podcast easier to find for other families who want to find great books to read with their kids, or maybe they're just dipping their toes in the read aloud water. If you could search for Read-Aloud Revival in iTunes and then leave a star rating and a review, we'd love that so much. I read every single review. I really appreciate that. And you're doing a lot of good for the Read-Aloud Revival when you take just a second to leave us a rating or review in iTunes. It should only take about 2 minutes. Would so appreciate it. Okay, ready for my 5 picks for teens today? Each of my 5 picks are great selections to read aloud with your teenagers. I think you'll enjoy them as much as your teens will. Just listen for the one that sounds interesting to you and give it a whirl. You might be surprised at how wonderful an experience reading aloud with your older kids can be. And don't worry if you're busy while you're listening and you can't jot down notes. We've got all these books over in the show notes for you. Go to readaloudrevival.com and look for episode 68. You'll find all the books I mentioned today. Okay, the first pick for teens is The Charlatan's Boy by Jonathan Rogers. If you caught last week's Read Aloud Revival episode, you know that Jonathan Rogers is my own favorite living author, really, and this book is just so good. This is how it starts. I only know one man who might be able to tell me where I come from, and that man is a liar and a fraud. Compelling, right? Grady, the main character, tramps through villages in the fictional world of Cornwall with a circus huckster named Floyd. And Grady and Floyd, they rely on the people of Cornwall to fall for their Feechie act. Feechies, by the way, are this swamp-dwelling folk. You might recognize Feechies if you've read Jonathan Rogers' Wilder King trilogy. This is not a part of the Wilder King trilogy, but it happens in the same world of Cornwall. So they rely on the people of Cornwall to fall for their Feechie act, but nobody really believes in Feechies anymore. And so Floyd ends up coming with this grand scheme called the Great Feechie Scare. And this results in having some surprising results, both for the people of Cornwall and for themselves. This is really a book about knowing who you are and knowing whose you are. I am telling you, I copied so many passages from this one into my own reading journal. I think Jonathan Rogers is a masterful storyteller, and I highly recommend this one as a read aloud to your teens. Book 2 is Navigating Early by Claire Vanderpool. Okay, so Claire Vanderpool is the author of Newbery Award-winning Moonover Manifest. I have not actually read that one yet. It's on my to-read stack. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I have read this one, Navigating Early. It's been described as reminiscent of Huckleberry Finn. I quite agree. That's a good description. What we have here is a boy named Jack who is sent to live in a boarding school. And while he's there, he befriends an odd boy named Early Ouden. On their school break, both Early and Jack set out on the Appalachian Trail to find a great black bear that Early is certain they will find, and to answer some deeper questions they have as well. But that's not all they find or what they find out on their quest. This is a really powerful book about friendship, about death, about loneliness. I know that sounds heavy and sad, but it's starkly beautiful, really engaging. I think your teens, both boys and girls, will really enjoy Navigating Early by Claire Vanderpool. My third selection is Princess Academy by Shannon Hale. I just so wish this book had a different title, and I wish it had a different cover as well, actually. If you look at the cover, it kind of looks like a Disney princess story, and that is not even remotely close. Even the word Princess Academy does not really accurately describe the richness of this one. It's not your average princess tale. It's one that your teens will love, especially if you like to give them books with strong female characters, then you don't want to miss this one. Princess Academy is the story of a girl named Miri, who is sent to an academy to her village's mountain, where all the girls have to study in order to learn how to become to be a princess, just in case they're selected by the prince. So in this story, Shannon Hale, she weaves these characters together. I mean, the depth of the characters in her books, you're not ready to leave them when the book ends. They're rich. You feel like you know them. Just really powerful. And this is a story of courage and resilience and fortitude. I would categorize this one as an adventure tale more than anything else. There's lots of action. There's a strong plot to keep you turning pages. I think your boys would like it every bit as much as your girls. Like I said, it needs a different title, but Princess Academy by Shannon Hale definitely makes my list of 5. Okay, the fourth one I want to tell you about today is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a book written in verse, and it has been one of my own favorites to read this past year. It's actually made me want to go find as many other books in verse as I can find. This is Jacqueline Woodson's memoir of sorts. It won a National Book Award as well as a Newbery Honor, both for really good reason. It's a collection of poems that read start to finish like a novel. So you could read any of the poems alone, but when you read them in order, they string together like a novel. That's what a novel in verse is. And this one is all about Jacqueline's experience growing up in the 60s and 70s as an African-American girl during the aftermath of the civil rights movement. Her writing is very lyrical, very strong, and anyone who struggled to learn how to read, but who loves books and reading, will enjoy Jacqueline's own journey toward finding her voice through stories and poems. She tells that story all throughout the book. As with other novels written in verse, it's usually best if you read aloud novels in verse while looking at the text together, if possible, either with your own copies or just sitting next to your teen so you guys can look at the pages together, because the way poems are laid out on a page shed light on their meaning. And so Caroline Starr Rose, who's a favorite novelist in verse of mine, she told me that it's important if you're reading aloud books in verse to see the text as well as to hear it. There is also a gorgeous audiobook of Brown Girl Dreaming, read by Jacqueline Woodson herself. That would be a great option, and we will link to that in the show notes as well. My next pick is The Wednesday Wars by Gary Schmidt, who's basically a genius when it comes to crafting compelling tales. This one also won a Newbery Honor. It's the story of Halling Hood during the school year in 1967 and 68 in Long Island, New York. There's a lot happening in the world when the novel is happening, the Vietnam War for one, and then more personal issues to Halling, like the bully who demands that he brings him cream puffs, his father's obsession with his architecture business and keeping the perfect house, and his teacher deciding that it's time for Halling to learn some Shakespeare. I know more than one kid who's decided to go ahead and read Shakespeare on their own after reading this book. It really does make you want to get lost in the bard's work. When I finished reading The Wednesday Wars, I started thinking, I think it's time for me to read The Tempest. Schmidt is a master. And in this book, he tackles big and important themes in a funny, lighthearted manner. You will be thinking about this one after you finish putting it down for a while. Okay, I'm going to give you one more. I know I said 5. I'm going to give you 6 because I want to tell you about The Boundless by Kenneth Oppel. I read this one earlier this summer and really enjoyed it. It caught me by surprise several times. It's steampunk fiction, magical realism. It's set during the early days of the Canadian Railway, and there are just touches of magic that keep the plot moving. So Will is the main character in the book, and he is hungry for adventure. And boy, does he get one when he finds himself in possession of the key to a train car that contains some treasures that some of the more unsavory characters in the book desperately want access to. It's action-packed and fast-moving, and this is a book your teens will probably ask you for one more chapter almost every day that you read aloud. I love the way the author wove in history, the concept of social injustice, and then this call to courage and doing what's right along with a fast-paced action, especially if you have a teen boy who's not really big into reading and hasn't fallen in love with books. Try this one either on audio or as a read aloud on your own and see if you reading it aloud or putting it on an audiobook doesn't engage and interest him. We'll put a link to the audiobook in the show notes for this episode as well. Now it's time for Let the Kids Speak. This is my favorite part of the podcast, where kids tell us about their favorite stories that have been read aloud to them.
My name is Silas, and I am 7 years old, and I live in Washington State. And my favorite book is The Chronicles of Narnia, and I like it because of Aslan.
What is your name?
Helen.
How old are you?
2 years old.
Where do you live?
I live in Washington State.
And what's your favorite book?
My favorite book is it's Click Clack Moo, and I like the duck.
Hey, what is your name?
Esther Faith Guam.
Esther Faith Guam. How old are you, Esther? You are 2 years old. Where do you live? Washington State.
State.
And what is your favorite book?
Click Clack Moo.
Why do you like Click Clack Moo?
Click Clack Moo.
Because you like saying clickety clack moo.
I am Mariah, and I'm 5 years old, and I live in Washington State.
What is your favorite book?
Cat in the Hat, and I like it because Cat in the Hat plays with Think 1 and Think 2. My name is Caleb. I am 6.5 years old. My favorite book is Bubbleton because I like the part when he says, because they are going to eat me if I order plain. My name is Sarah. I'm in Tennessee, and I'm 5 years old, and my favorite book is Bubbleton. I like when they say, like, you have a word on your nose. A word!
What's your name?
Abraham Owens.
Where do you live, Abraham?
Georgia.
What's your favorite book?
Diggers are coming.
The Diggers Are Coming?
Yeah.
Why do you like that book?
Because
Why?
Because there's a lot of diggers in there.
Do you like diggers?
Yeah. When I was Judah.
How old are you, Judah?
I'm 3 years old.
And where do you live?
St. Louis, Missouri.
And what's one of your favorite books?
The space one.
Why is it one of your favorites?
Because I like it. Let's find pictures of rockets. Hello, my name is Clarky Johnson, and I live in Linden, Washington, and I'm 7 years old, and my favorite book is Peter Pan, because when Peter Pan comes, he teaches them how to fly, and then one of the stars tells him when to leave. Hello, my name is Davy Johnson, and I live in Linden, Washington, and I'm 6, and my favorite book is Cowboys, and my favorite part is when you can see all the horses and cattle and the people riding on horses.
Thanks to you for tuning in to this mini episode. Make sure you're subscribed to the Read-Aloud Revival in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any episodes. Don't forget to take just 2 minutes to go to iTunes to leave us a star rating and review, and then get our emails when you sign up at readaloudrevival.com so you don't miss our many free resources, book lists, giveaways for families who love to share books with their kids. That's at readaloudrevival.com. I'll be back in a week with another episode of the Read Aloud Revival. Until then, go make meaningful and lasting connections with your kids through books.